So I'm here at Art Toronto 2012 with Joshua and his work Glory Hole, which I posted a very brief, what I like to call a shotgun review, but it turned out to be kind of a gut reaction review. And I got an email from Josh asking me for more information about my view of the work yesterday, which I think is terrific because I find in Canada, in the art scene here, there's a lack of critical public discourse, and there's usually a very bad reaction to any sort of negative criticism, and that usually results in some sort of minor form of ostracization, silence, treatment, resentment, and this is actually a real problem here. So when you wrote me, I was like completely impressed, and that was like such an awesome thing to do. It's like, hey, can you explain more about your criticism? And so I really respect that and really appreciate it. So I was really eager to come back and talk to you more about your piece.
Thanks.
So this is it. This is the Glory Hole, which I just saw it, and it's just like immediately like made me pleased to look at it. And then I mentioned in my 2-line response to it that I thought it was a bit of what I kind of sarcastically call punchline art, in a sense that I didn't really feel there was much beyond sort of the initial reaction of a glory hole and a vine of flowers sort of coming out of the hole. Maybe I'm jaded. I don't know, but Joshua, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a minute to talk about your work now, and then we can just discuss it a little bit more afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this piece is a bit of an experiment for me, but it's an installation that's coupled with a performance, and it's a performance of object making. So I was kind of reflecting on my position as an installation artist in a commercial kind of institution such as the art fair. And so I wanted to have a performance of object making where I was removed from the object that I was producing. And so I chose these flowers and the idea of the glory hole because a lot of my work revolves around a kind of sex and death duality. And in India, I was really inspired by the flower markets that they have there because flowers are one instance where they have this great spiritual and kind of sentimental meaning for weddings and funerals. However, they're also sold, and there's an intense economic investment in the flower markets. And the glory hole for me kind of had implications of the ego. I like the wordplay of glory hole, like something where the body is removed, but something is allowed to be ejected outwards into it. So I kind of wanted to combine those two ideas and have a durational piece where there's a trace of me in a constant state of making.
Okay, so what I'm keying in on as you're talking, that's a really clear, well considered statement about the work. So what I'm keying in on is this is part of this is a very logical part of your body of work. This piece right here.
I would think so.
So do you find it, I mean, a lot of artists kind of complain that it's sort of difficult to appreciate a single piece from their ongoing body when you present it sort of out of context or just on its own.
Right.
And so the viewer, when they're like sort of the 5-second time on average you have of people walking by, they may not sort of appreciate it because when I was looking at it, I wasn't bringing sort of any cultural or historical research about this to it. I was just sort of doing Porky's movie Glory Hole or something like that. And this is sort of like some of the problem of really, considering serious work and what's happening to it. And then we're at the Toronto International Art Fair, so you have this sort of need to have all these singular, spectacular pieces that work on their own outside of the body of work.
Right.
So do you find this is a problem, or this skews the kind of art that is presented in this context?
I think it's something that I actually embraced with this piece because, like I told you before, I'm only 22. I don't really expect anyone to really know my body of work yet, right? So for this piece, I actually wanted it to be something that you could walk by and potentially miss, because it's something that, when faced with the idea of having to produce a piece that everyone will just get in a kind of institution like this, where everyone is walking by and you're lucky if you get 30 seconds of being viewed.
Right, yeah.
I wanted it to be something where I was continuously working through that despite the visibility, and there would always be a trace of the time that I actually put into the work through the extension of flowers.
Okay, so this really was a work that was considered for this specific space and this specific
Yes.
experience, and the fact that it is sort of an isolating, but yet bustling sort of public space.
Yeah,
So
for
that's-
sure.
Okay, so see that? Yeah, now I'm digging it, right? And you know, we don't always give things as you sort of become more of a quote, and I mean this like tongue in cheek, like an expert. Like I've seen a lot of like art over the last few years since I've been doing this blog. You kind of, the more you think you become an expert in something, the more sort of jaded and closed your views of that industry sort of become.
For sure, yeah.
So I feel like this is sort of a good example, a good example of this. And you know, a lot of work, you know, just sort of tries to look like it has something else sort of meaning before it, but a lot of it's just sort of like a glitter or sort of a glam sort of attempt to kind of like appeal to someone right away in order to sort of get that hook.
Right.
And that's what I was talking about, punchline art. So I apologize. That wasn't really a fair statement to your work. And again, I mean, I really, what you did was sort of reaching out and not in a very angry way.
I wasn't angry. I was more curious as to.
Awesome. So, and probably that has to do with you being out of school recently. It's sort of like accepting of this like critique or this discussion kind of thing where you can get negative comments, but that is actually an opportunity to talk about something. And sometimes, like I've been out of school for a little while, a lot of people I deal with have as well, and you kind of, I guess, lose that very useful tool to continue with. So, is there supposed to be an element of humor to this with the glory hole? Okay,
yes,
yeah.
for sure. I mean, a lot of my work is kind of very dark and serious, and this one, I didn't want to make it like in your face hilarious, but I feel like there's always a little element of humor when you have something so absurdly sexual in something so public. Yeah.
And speaking of like, you know, sort of revealing the nakedness in the public, let's just take a quick look at the back of this, because I think this is interesting. I know other artists might take the approach of sort of covering up the rough bits and hiding this, so it'd be up against a wall or there'd be like light coming from behind it or something like this. But this is like proud and loud.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the viewer considering the back of this piece?
Right. So a large part of this, originally what I wanted to do was make like a nice mirrored cube and like be in it and have no one actually see me at all. But then I realized that this is a performance about making, and you'd be surprised how many people walk by and don't actually look behind this piece to see someone. And when they do, a lot of people are really surprised, like physically shocked that there's actually a person behind there making it, which has been a nice experience and also unexpected. And I think that's the great thing about performance art is you never really know how to locate your artwork until you're in it performing, right? So yeah, and also it's kind of for me taking an internal psychological state that is culturally produced and kind of finishing it. So on one side, this is kind of my studio, and on the other side, this is my production for the art world.
Okay.
And the way in which we... So it's a little bit of a portal, I guess.
Right on. And one final question, Joshua. Where did you go to school?
York University.
York University?
Yeah.
Okay, and did you enjoy the experience there?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I did my major in visual arts, sculpture and installation, and my minor in sexuality studies.
Oh, okay. So this makes perfect
Makes sense.
makes perfect sense, and this is an excellent MFA application work too.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
Well, Joshua, thanks very much. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Cheers.